In the chaos of modern warfare, there is a sound that soldiers on the ground never forget. Not the sound of an explosion, not the roar of a jet engine, but something far more terrifying. A deep mechanical growl, followed by a ripping thunder that seems to tear the sky apart. For American troops, that sound means salvation. For enemy soldiers, it means the battlefield has just turned against them. Because when that sound echoes across the desert or the mountains, it can only mean one thing. The A-10 Thunderbolt II has arrived. When the Warthog shows up, the battlefield changes in seconds. To many Americans, the A-10 represents something far bigger than just another military aircraft. It represents a philosophy. A promise that American soldiers on the ground will never be left alone. While most combat jets are built for speed, stealth, and high-altitude warfare, the A-10 was built with a very different purpose in mind. It was designed to fly low, slow, and dangerously close to the battlefield, placing itself directly in harm's way so it could protect the troops below. It's not sleek like modern stealth fighters, and it certainly isn't the fastest aircraft in the sky. In fact, some people once mocked its unusual shape, calling it ugly. But soldiers who have watched the Warthog save their lives know something very different. They know that this strange-looking aircraft might be the most beautiful thing you could ever see when you're trapped in the middle of a firefight. The story of the A-10 begins during one of the most dangerous periods in modern history, the Cold War. During the late 1960s, American military planners faced a terrifying reality. If a war broke out in Europe between NATO and the Soviet Union, thousands of heavily armored Soviet tanks could pour across the continent like an unstoppable steel wave. Existing aircraft were not designed to handle that kind of threat. Fast jets could strike targets quickly, but they could not stay over the battlefield long enough to support soldiers who were fighting tank columns, advancing mile after mile. What the United States needed was a completely different kind of aircraft. They needed something rugged, simple, powerful, and capable of destroying armored vehicles one after another while surviving the intense anti-aircraft fire that would come with such missions. In other words, they needed a flying tank killer. But the most remarkable thing about the A-10 is how it was designed. Most aircraft begin as aerodynamic shapes, carefully sculpted to move through the air efficiently. The A-10 began with a weapon, and not just any weapon. At the heart of the aircraft sits the GAU-8 Avenger, a massive 7-barrel rotary cannon that is so large and powerful that engineers had to build the airplane around it. This cannon fires 30-millimeter rounds at a staggering rate of nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. Each shell is capable of tearing through armored vehicles with devastating force. When the trigger is pulled, the spinning barrels unleash a storm of fire so intense that pilots describe the entire aircraft shaking violently as the gun roars to life. The sound it produces is unlike anything else in the sky. A deep mechanical ripping noise that soldiers across the battlefield instantly recognize. That sound has become legendary. It's the sound that American troops wait for when they need help the most. But the cannon alone is not what makes the A-10 extraordinary. The entire aircraft was built to survive conditions that would destroy most other jets. Engineers understood that flying low over a battlefield meant the aircraft would constantly face anti-aircraft guns, missiles, and heavy machine gun fire. So they designed the A-10 like a flying fortress. The cockpit is protected by a titanium armor shell often referred to as the titanium bathtub, capable of shielding the pilot from direct hits by heavy rounds. The aircraft's engines are mounted high on the fuselage to reduce the risk of damage from ground fire and to minimize heat exposure from infrared-guided missiles. Even the control systems were designed with redundancy in mind, allowing the aircraft to continue flying even after suffering catastrophic durability damage. Has produced some of the most remarkable survival stories in aviation history. Over the years, A-10 pilots have brought aircraft home that looked almost impossible to fly. Some returned with huge holes torn through their wings. Others landed safely after losing one of their engines entirely. In several documented cases, the aircraft lost its entire hydraulic system, something that would normally make a jet completely uncontrollable. Yet the A-10 has a backup manual control system that allows the pilot to fly the aircraft using simple cables and mechanical linkages, similar to aircraft from the early days of aviation. That level of resilience is almost unheard of in modern combat aircraft, and it's one of the reasons pilots trust the Warthog with their lives every time they take off. The aircraft's reputation truly exploded during the Gulf War in 1991. As coalition forces launched their campaign to liberate Kuwait, the A-10 became one of the most effective weapons on the battlefield. Flying thousands of missions, Warthog pilots hunted Iraqi armored divisions with relentless precision. By the end of the conflict, A-10s were credited with destroying more than 900 tanks and thousands of other military vehicles, including artillery systems, trucks, and missile launchers. For enemy troops on the ground, the appearance of the A-10 often meant that their armored columns were about to be torn apart by a weapon designed specifically to hunt them. But beyond the statistics and battlefield victories, the true legacy of the A-10 lies in the relationship it has built with American troops. Soldiers who have fought in places like Iraq and Afghanistan often tell the same story. When a unit becomes pinned down by enemy fire, the radio call goes out for close air support. Sometimes minutes pass that feel like hours. Then, suddenly, a pilot responds over the radio, confirming that help is on the way. Moments later, a dark silhouette appears low over the horizon. The aircraft circles once, lining up its attack run, and then the sound arrives, that unmistakable ripping roar of the GAU-8 cannon firing in short, devastating bursts. Enemy positions disappear in clouds of dust and debris, and the pressure on the soldiers below vanishes almost instantly. For American troops, the arrival of the Warthog is more than just tactical support. It's reassurance. It's the knowledge that someone is watching over them from the sky, ready to risk everything to protect them. The pilots flying those missions know they are placing themselves directly in danger, yet they return again and again, circling the battlefield for as long as their fuel allows. That commitment has created a level of trust between ground troops and A-10 pilots that few other aircraft in history have achieved. Today, decades after its first flight, the A-10 Thunderbolt II continues to serve. New fighter jets with stealth technology and advanced electronics have entered the arsenal. Yet none have been able to fully replace what the Warthog does best. Its combination of firepower, durability, and precision close air support remains unmatched. For many Americans, the A-10 stands as a symbol of a unique kind of military innovation, not designed to impress at air shows or dominate headlines, but designed for one simple mission: protecting the people on the ground who need it most. And so even today, on battlefields far from home, soldiers sometimes look up and hear that familiar sound echo across the sky. A deep mechanical thunder that arrives like a storm rolling over the horizon. To those who stand under the American flag, it's the sound of protection, loyalty, and unmatched engineering. But to those who find themselves on the wrong side of that battlefield, it's something else entirely. It's the sound that tells them the fight has just become unwinnable. It's the sound of the Warthog.